We have taken extraordinary steps to discuss this matter in ways that typically we do not.
Well, let me ask you this.
When charges are not brought. And as I indicated before, just so it's clear, my reasons for not going into the substance of the information that I receive and review before I made my decision to accept the recommendation are that the teams that I work with, whether it's this case or any other, be free to provide confidential analysis, discussion, without the input of any.
With all due respect, Madam Attorney General, you can do all of what you just described and still tell the people what element. I mean, the elements of a criminal offense are public, so there's no secret there. And for you to go through the elements and say, as Director Comey did, he said there was no specific intent. I'm out of time, but I suspect you have prosecuted reckless homicide cases, haven't you?
In the context of violent crime.
How about involuntary manslaughter?
For the department or personally?
No, just as a prosecutor. There's involuntary manslaughter, there's reckless homicide, there's felony DUI where you really didn't mean to hurt anybody. You really didn't, but you did. And this lack of specific intent is not a defense in any of those cases. So I think the public would like to know how you determined she did not have the intent to break the law and why you are applying a specific intent requirement here when you don't even do it in certain homicide cases.
Well, Congressman, as I've said, I think you've mentioned a number of state cases there. But as I've said, the reason why I am not going into the discussion I had and providing that particular level of information, although the FBI director did choose to do so, is that the information the team provides to me on this or any other case has to be given in a zone of confidentiality so that they can be clear and sure that there's never a political overtone to their decisions, nor will I apply one in accepting their decisions. That's why we have taken the unusual steps of providing greater information, as frustrating as that has been for a number of people to have additional information. That's why I took the unusual step of clarifying my role in this investigation.
I'm out of time. The only thing I find frustrating is that even after this and Director Comey, people still believe that if you are famous, there's a different set of rules than if people don't know your name. And I think you're missing a wonderful opportunity to say with specificity which evidentiary element you found lacking. So Congress can go fix the statute if you think we need to, but right now, we have no idea whether or not a President Lynch could do exactly what Secretary Clinton did, or whether President Clinton could do exactly what Secretary Clinton did. And I think that lack of clarity is bad for the Republic, quite frankly.
And Cappy, among many limitations in life is my inability to glean other people's motives or be able to read their minds. I could have sworn in response to a question you received from Mr. Cohen, you suggested race was the basis for why we may have this constitutional perspective. Did I understand you correctly?
I believe I was responding to the question about is there an explanation about why?
Well, let me offer another explanation to you, okay? Not a single Republican who is here right now ever served under a Republican president. Not one. So I hope I do live long enough to hold a Republican president to the exact same standard that I'm holding this one. But for you to run to race as the explanation for why we hold the position that we do. Harry Reid had a very different perspective on recess appointments when there was a Texan in the White House, and none of us accused him of geographic discrimination. In fact, hell, for that matter, Senator Obama had a different perspective on executive overreach than President Obama, and nobody runs to race as an explanation for that. So I would just caution you to be careful when you try to import motives to people.
Have all available video footage from that evening?
It does not, sir.
Why not?
Sir, we have provided that footage, video that we have to this committee.
All of it?
We have shown 2 clips. We have not shown all of it. No,
that's not my question, Director. You just said that Congress has a constitutional responsibility to provide oversight. Yep. You just agreed with me that Ranking Member Cummings and Chairman Chaffetz have the best interests of the President and the agency in mind. So why wouldn't you not turn over all video footage to this committee?
Congressman, we will show all video at any time, day or night, that this committee would like to review the footage that we have. We have done that. In fact, the chairman was the first, I believe, to see this video before we showed.
With all due respect, that's not true. Go ahead, Mr. Gowdy.
No, I would
Chairman, I'd like to just correct it. If I have to correct the record, I'd like to correct it.
I would like to yield to the gentleman from Utah because I was under the misapprehension apparently that this committee was not in possession of all available video from that night.
That's correct. They are not in possession of the video, but we did allow the chairman to view the video.
You've shown us less than 1 minute of video.
Yes. Yes, sir.
Well, back to my question. Will you make all available video? And I say available because we're going to get in a second to the fact that all of it was not preserved. Will you make all available video available to this committee?
We will make all video available to this committee for your review at any time, day or night.
Will you make a copy of it available so we can retain custody as opposed to simply showing it to us?
I will not release a copy of this video at this point.
Why not?
The OIG has an ongoing investigation.
Do you think the OIG's responsibilities supersede those of Congress?
Sir, I know that they have an ongoing investigation.
Well, can't you have simultaneous ongoing investigations? Why can't Congress provide oversight while the IG is investigating? Why do you have to pick and choose?
Sir, again, I think we have one initial investigation from the OIG, and we've given them the film to look at.
But you understand the responsibility of the IG is very different from the responsibility of Congress. Congress determines funding, among other things. The IG does not. So those two are not exclusive. Why can't Congress investigate what's in its jurisdiction while the IG does what's in its jurisdiction?
Congressman, I'm sure after the OIG's investigation...
I don't want to wait till after, because then that makes me think that you believe that Congress's constitutional responsibility to provide oversight is subservient to the IG. And surely to the Lord you can't believe that.
Sir, the ongoing investigation that the Secret Service has as well regarding the protective intelligence case. We have an individual who committed a crime, made a threat, and that investigation is also going on at this time within the Secret Service.
And how will providing that video footage to Congress jeopardize that ongoing investigation? With precision, how will it?
That video shows the actions of the individual who would be accused of a criminal act.
I get that. My question is, how will providing that to Mr. Cummings and Mr. Chaffetz jeopardize an ongoing investigation?
Well, again,
with specificity.
I am happy to show that video all day and be available at all hours of the day and night to show that video, but at this point we cannot release that video.
All right, that's the video that is available. The video that is not available, will you agree with me that there are at least 2 potential crime scenes at play on the evening of March 4th? At least 2. There's an assault on an officer and there's a suspicious package.
That's correct.
All right, why would the video not be preserved as part of that ongoing investigation that you just cited as the reason you can't give the video to Congress? Why wouldn't you preserve it?
The process, my understanding of the process is that the watch commander on site relays back the incident that he is the incident commander for, and he calls back to our Joint Operations Center and says, we do have an incident here, we have a suspicious package, preserve the video from this incident.
Director, I'm out of time, but I want you to consider for just a moment the dueling narratives that you had just portrayed.
Sir.
Number one, we're not going to give the video that does exist to Congress because its investigation is subservient to the IG investigation. That's narrative number one. And narrative number 2 is you're not even going to preserve video that could be used in an investigation of 2 potential crimes. Did I hear that right? I have a plane to catch tomorrow afternoon. I'm not going to go through any more of the false statements, but I am going to ask you to put on your old hat. False exculpatory statements, they are used for what?
Well, either for a substantive prosecution or for evidence of intent in a criminal prosecution.
Exactly. Intent and consciousness of guilt, right? Is that right?
Right.
Consciousness of guilt and intent. Mm-hmm. You would also probably, under common scheme or plan, argue the burn bags of
daily calendar entries or the missing daily calendar entries as a common scheme or plan to conceal. 2 days ago, Director, you said a reasonable person in her position should have known a private email was no place to send and receive classified information. You're right, an average person does know not to do that. This is no average person. This is a former First Lady, a former United States Senator, and a former Secretary of State that the President now contends is the most competent, qualified person to be president since Jefferson. He didn't say that in 2008, but he says it now. She affirmatively rejected efforts to give her a state.gov account. She kept these private emails for almost 2 years and only turned them over to Congress because we found out she had a private email account. There's nothing to keep a future Secretary of State or President from this exact same email scheme or their staff. And my real fear is this. It's what the chairman touched upon. This double-track justice system that is rightly or wrongly perceived in this country. That if you are a private in the Army and you email yourself classified information, you will be kicked out. But if you are Hillary Clinton and you seek a promotion to Commander-in-Chief, you will not be. So what I hope you can do today is help the average person, the reasonable person you made reference to, the reasonable person understand why she appears to be treated differently than the rest of us would be.
We'll now recognize the gentleman from South Carolina, Mr. Gowdy, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Administrator Leonhardt, if an agent stateside were soliciting a prostitute that was provided by a drug conspiracy he was investigating, what punishment would you recommend?
I can't recommend a punishment. I would just hope that would be thoroughly investigated. And
so you're telling me nobody cares what the administrator of the DEA thinks should happen to an agent? You're powerless to express your opinion. You have no First Amendment right when it comes to who works for your agency.
I have expressed my opinion in a number of ways.
What did you express? What did you think the proper sanction was?
Last year, I sent email and I sent a memo to every employee in DEA and put them on notice that this kind of conduct was not acceptable.
My question must have been ambiguous because I wasn't talking about future conduct. I was talking about past conduct. What punishment did you recommend for conduct that happened in the past?
Under the civil service law, I cannot recommend a penalty. I can't intervene in the disciplinary process. I can't even make a recommendation.
What does it take to get, what would it, hypothetically, what would it take to get fired as a DEA agent? Because the agents I used to work with were worried about using their car to go pick up dry cleaning. They were actually worried about using their OGV to pick up dry cleaning. They were worried about being disciplined. So apparently that world has changed. Do you know whether any of the prostitutes were underage?
I don't know that.
Would that impact whatever recommendation you might have in terms of a sanction?
I don't recommend the sanction. I can't fire. I can't recommend a penalty. There's a guide that the deciding officials abide by, and they have a penalty guide that they look at. And the penalty guide for this kind of activity is anything from reprimand to removal.
How about security clearance? Do you have any impact over that, whether or not an agent has a security clearance?
No, there's adjudicative guidelines, and that has to be adjudicated by the security people.
What power do you have? You have to work with agents over whom you can't discipline and have no control, and you have no control over the security clearance. What the hell do you get to do?
What I can do is build on and improve mechanisms to make sure that the outcome is what we believe the outcome should be. And that is what happened in Cartagena. That is what's going to happen moving forward.
Inspector General Horowitz, I find that stunning. Let me ask you this. Did the agents know that the cartels were providing the prostitutes?
What we found, Congressman, from looking in the file was that they should have known, given their trained law enforcement agents, and they were dealing with corrupt law enforcement, local law enforcement, that was providing them with the prostitutes as well as the various gifts.
Were they supposed to be investigating these cartels?
They were.
So they are receiving prostitutes from cartels that they are supposed to be investigating. And she can't fire those agents. You agree with her? She can't fire them?
I think as a matter of Title V, she can't directly intervene and fire them. I do think one of the concerns we outline in the report as to DEA and the other 3 agencies is how they adjudicate these cases. They undercharge them in some instances. And so at DEA, for example, sexual harassment, if you're charged with that, there's only one punishment: removal. But if you're charged with conduct unbecoming or poor judgment, which isn't even actually a category, then you've got a range of penalties. And so one of the issues, as you know as a former prosecutor, is how you charge the case. And that has a consequence.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I don't know what would need to be done, but I, like my friend from South Carolina, find it stunning that you can solicit prostitutes. Administrator Leonhardt, do we know whether any of the prostitutes were underage? Do we know whether any of them were part of any human trafficking rings?
Because the Bogota case happened a decade ago, there were no interviews of prostitutes. On the more recent one, the Cartagena one, it did not identify an age for the prostitute involved.
Mr. Chairman, I would just find it impossible to explain to any reasonable-minded person how an agent cannot be disciplined for soliciting prostitutes from drug cartels that they were ostensibly investigating. I find that stunning. When you said they proposed it and that passed because the American people are too stupid to understand the difference.
When I said that, I was at an academic conference being glib and, quite frankly, trying to make myself seem smart by insulting others.
Are you offering the venue as a defense for saying it or for meaning it?
I'm offering it as a defense for using inappropriate and hurtful and inexcusable language to express.
Well, what did you mean by too stupid to understand the difference?
Congressman, I didn't mean anything by it.
Well, you said it. You had to admit it.
I was once again being glib and trying to make myself seem smarter by reflecting.
Well, what did you mean when you said it was a very basic exploitation of the lack of economic understanding of the American voter? What did you mean by that?
Once again, it's another example of my inexcusable arrogance in trying to insult others to make myself seem smarter.
Well, what did you mean when you said the American people don't care about the uninsured?
Once again, that was an overstatement of trying to conjecture on political topics in which I'm not an expert.
Well, you know what, Professor Gruber, I have listened to you all morning talk about your lack of political acumen and that you're not a politician, so therefore you don't know not to call people stupid. Most of the people watching this morning aren't politicians, and they don't call people stupid. And I can't help but note, Professor Gruber, and another one of your quotes, which I'll read to you, that was politically infeasible. You remember saying that?
Yes.
So you do like to factor in the politics from time to time, don't you? And also happen to know, Professor Gruber, that usually you insult the American voter, not the American public. So you do factor in politics, don't you?
I have tried a number of occasions, pretended that I know more about politics.
Do you think not being a politician is a defense? And is that your defense this morning? I mean, I know initially you said that you offered these comments at a conference. I think you meant conferences, plural, but you said conference when you went on a very obscure television show and initially apologized for what you said were inappropriate comments. And now today your defense is that you're not a politician. Is that the best you can come up with?
The best I come up with is to really just apologize for an inexcusable.
Well, but I want to know, I mean, the pervasiveness of your quotes is so much that it has to be more than that. It has to be more than just an episodic mistake that you made. Well, here, let me keep going. See if this helps you any. What did you mean when you said you wish that you had been able to be transparent, but you'd rather have the law than not?
Once again, it was my trying to conjecture about a political process in which I'm not an expert.
Well, what did you mean when you said it was written in a tortured way to make sure the CBO didn't score the mandate as a tax?
Once again, it was using inappropriate language to try to sound impressive about something to my colleagues.
You see a trend developing here, Professor Gruber?
I don't understand the question.
It's a lot of stupid quotes you've made. That's the trend.
A lot of
you see them?
Inexcusable quotes. Yes.
Right. And again, your defense is that you're not a politician. The lack of transparency is a huge political advantage. Well, what does a non-politician do in talking about political advantages?
A non-politician is talking about political advantages to try to make himself seem smarter by conjecturing about something he doesn't really know.
So you're a professor at MIT and you're worried about not looking smart enough?
Yes.
Okay. Well, you succeeded, if that was your goal. Now, I want to ask you, are you sorry? When did you realize that these comments were inappropriate? Because it took you about a year to apologize, so I'm trying to figure out if you realized sooner that they were inappropriate, or was it just the morning before you went on MSNBC that you realized that it was inappropriate? When did you realize that these comments are indefensible and inappropriate?
I honestly didn't remember making them.
You didn't remember calling your fellow citizens stupid, and you didn't remember saying that you're the only person who cares about the uninsured, that the rest of your fellow citizens don't give a damn about the uninsured? You don't remember saying that?
I don't, because they were really glib and thoughtless comments that I made.
Well, Professor Gruber, let me just tell you what it looks like from this vantage point, is that you thought that they were really pithy and really funny until the video showed up. And then even then, it took you a little while to apologize. And what I'm struggling with is whether your apology is because you said it or because you meant it. Which are you apologizing for? Because you said it or because you meant it?
I didn't mean it. I'm apologizing.
All of these quotes that I just read to you, you didn't mean a single one of them. Not a one.
What I said, Congressman, is that I was using glib, thoughtless, and really inexcusable language.
You used them a lot. You used them a lot, Professor Gruber, which tends to undercut the notion that you were sorry for an episodic misstatement. I just read to you about 10. Do you see why people might possibly think the apology is a little disingenuous? Maybe.
Not a medical formulation, but I certainly understand that it was passed and is the law of the land, and Planned Parenthood certainly meets the requirements of that law.
My question wasn't whether you follow the law. My question was whether or not you understand how some of us may be very much opposed to that practice. That was my question.
I understand how people can disagree based on their religious beliefs, their background, their own personal experiences. And I also understand that people sometimes change over time, and that's the human condition.
Are you suggesting those who hold a contrary view to you need to change? Is that why you added that line, Ms. Richards?
No, I've just, candidly, in my 10 years at Planned Parenthood, I've experienced myself people who have picketed outside of our health center and then found themselves in need of our services, and we try not to judge.
And I'm sure that there have been employees who grew tired of participating in the practices that they were participating in, and they may have gone to the other side, might they? How about opposing abortions on the basis of gender or race? Can you understand how people may support legislation that ban that?
I think fundamentally at Planned Parenthood, we take the position that we trust women to make their decisions about their pregnancies. I've
see, Ms.
made my own
Richards,
decisions as well, and so I feel like I
Ms.
can
Richards,
kind of walk in these shoes.
I appreciate the way you like to frame the issue, that you're the reasonable one, and those of us who have a contrary position are not reasonable.
I didn't say that.
No, that's exactly the last answer you gave. That's exactly what it was. Much like your people evolved to a more advanced viewpoint. Much like that comment was also directed to that.
Those are not the words I said. I said sometimes people change their opinion.
No, it's not always what you say. Sometimes it's just what you mean.